Hello and welcome to the Talking City podcast from the Manchester Evening News. I'm your host Rich Fay. I'm delighted to be joined by Simon Bajkowski. On today's episode, we will be looking back at City's enthralling draw with Spurs at the weekend. We'll look ahead to the new Premier League deal, £6.7 billion. What will that mean for Man City? What will that mean for the rest of the league? And of course, we'll look at the Erling Haaland outburst. We'll take a look at Pep Guardiola's post-match comments as well. I mean, Si, we were promised fun, weren't we, at the Etihad on Sunday? Too much fun?
It wasn't much fun in the press box, let me tell you, with a 90th minute equaliser and then a 95th minute refereeing controversy to end all controversies. It was...
What's your match report looking like at that stage? It's just been ripped apart for an equaliser, and it's maybe ripped apart to focus on...
Yeah, it was, like I say, not very much fun. But yeah, the fans had a lot of fun. Too much fun for Pep Guardiola and Manchester City. They're not they don't enjoy those games.
They don't enjoy playing Tottenham, do they?
They never enjoy playing Tottenham, no, but they're certainly not enjoying at the minute, just not having that control. And Ange Postecoglou said after the game, he sort of said City, they never gave City that control in the second half. And he was like, that is what you need if you're to have any chance of taking a result. And that is very true. You know, there's been a lot of sort of people working out how to beat City, how to...
Blueprints.
Yeah. And one of the things is, you know, to not let them be in control, but it's much easier said than done.
Yeah, and we've seen before as well in the past, haven't we, that chaos can sometimes bring out the best of City, because City's best ever wins are always just when they ride that wave of chaos. But then when they have some of their more disappointing results, it's often that the chaos works against them. So it's very fine margins, maybe.
Yeah, you would say on the whole, Guardiola hates chaos, and you know, he said before, like, Calvin Phillips is a perfect player for us when the match is chaotic, and the fact that he never plays is because City never try and engineer chaos. But also, interestingly, he didn't come on Saturday. Rico Lewis was the one who was turned to, but yeah, it's just not. Chaos is usually a sign that City aren't on it, and like you say, they can be brilliant and use it to their advantage. But when I think of City using chaos to their advantage, it's somebody like Kevin De Bruyne stepping up and taking the mantle, and he's injured. So I'm not sure they've got... It felt like Sunday was a lot of sort of things coming to a head, various issues, and one of them being that sort of City's injured players are really sort of taking it out of the team.
Yeah, I mean, what is your reflection of the game then? Because I've seen on social media that some fans have said, look, we should have won that game comfortably. We had a lot of chances.
Yeah.
Other supporters said, look, it probably is a sort of fair result because it was that sort of match where both teams had their opportunities, both teams took them, both teams could have scored more, both teams could have conceded more. Do you think it was a fair result in the end?
I think it was, because City didn't put the chances away. I think if, you know, City did more than enough to win the game and were the better team than Spurs, but I agree with the Spurs manager that you always felt like Spurs were in the game, and City should have beaten Chelsea, should have beaten Liverpool, should have beaten Spurs. And I feel like after each one of those games, Guardiola has said, that's football. And it is, in a way.
If it keeps on happening time
but
and time
the longer
again,
it happens, the more you look for a pattern, and you more think, right, why are you conceding so many chances? Or even if you're not conceding so many chances, why is every chance you concede turning into a goal? And, you know, Pep said afterwards in his press conference there were sort of shades from his first season when they didn't win anything. There's also shades from 1920 when they didn't win the league, when they played really well a lot of the time, but they would just have sort of catastrophic errors at the back every so often.
So do you think that is leadership? Or, I mean, you've said there the injured players, particularly De Bruyne, I mean, anyone's going to miss a player of his quality. It's just they don't have that control, and maybe even the game management that they've had in the past, where the biggest compliment you can pay City is at their best they get called boring, because they take a lead and they see it out, and it's no frills because the away team has no chance of coming back into it.
Yeah.
Now City are worryingly very entertaining to watch again, which means something's going wrong.
Yeah, it does. And I feel like it's small things that are having that are building up to a knock-on effect. You know, like Kevin De Bruyne and John Stones being out, 2 players who would get into any team in world football.
Arguably 2 of the best midfielders in the world last season.
Yeah, it's a huge loss. And then you also consider last season when they won the league, De Bruyne was part of a 4 behind Haaland that was Grealish, De Bruyne, Gundogan and Bernardo or Mahrez. Now you've got Doku, Foden, Alvarez, Bernardo, but Bernardo's kind of inside, so it's Walker. It's a completely new front 4 almost behind Haaland. So that isn't helping, and those players aren't as accustomed to controlling games because they've not done it before, but they're also with their skill set. You know, Foden and Alvarez, Pep said after the Liverpool game, Foden and Alvarez are not De Bruyne and Gundogan.
No, they don't control the game in the same way.
No, they don't have what those players have, and they have other qualities, but they're not as good at control. When you don't have that control, it's harder for sort of the rest of the team to keep control. There's more pressure on the defence when those further forward don't have control. The defence then are under more pressure and put in more situations where they may concede. So they do concede more goals. Rodri is put under more pressure when those players ahead of him don't keep the ball. Rodri's got 5 yellow cards already. He misses the Villa game. So it's small things that are sort of colliding into each other that are all making it a bit difficult. And we should also say they're 3 points off the top of the table. So it's not like the end of the world.
No, if there's going to be a season where you're going to have maybe a few issues, then get like last season, City, you know, Arsenal were runaway favourites for lots of it, and then City just did what City do and came good. And part of you still thinks, well, this season it could still very much end up that way once those players are back, once they've found a way to play with their newer players. And again, another point on that is they are depleted, so their options off the bench aren't necessarily the game changers they've had in the past because they don't have as many options really. I mean,
no, and you know, Grealish came off the bench and scored what should have been the winner.
And then you'd be saying what a wonderful sub he was and what an option, what luxury it was to have.
And you know, could have scored again had that refereeing incident that we'll get onto didn't happen. So there is more options than there was maybe a week ago or a month ago or whatever. But also you've got, you know, it's great that Rico Lewis is coming on and is trusted as sort of the person to change it. But you've also got, you know, Kovacic on the bench who's not trusted ahead of Lewis. And, you know, Kovacic had a really good start at City and then he's kind of tailed off after a few injuries, and he is yet to show kind of that he can do what he was brought here to do.
Do you think that's just typical first season under Pep, take a while to adjust, or do you think, again, that is just someone...
Yeah, I think it is. And I think, you know, you say with young players is you want to drop them into an established team. You don't want to stick 5 academy players out on the pitch and then...
The Man United approach.
Wonder why it's not worked, because you want, say, a player to play among everyone else who knows what they're doing, and then they
learn the patterns of play, get their confidence up, and it's not conducive to nurture a young talent if they're in a team that's erratic and doesn't have that confidence.
And it's the same with a new talent. You know, I'm sure Kovacic would play better if he was with De Bruyne or Gundogan. We can't keep mentioning Gundogan because he's left, but it is an important departure. So it is one of those things where it's probably not helped him, but also, he has tailed off a bit with his performances since the start of the season.
The elephant in the room, the incident. Are we going to call it just the incident? Is that a better way to sort of... It's like an ITV drama, isn't it? The incident.
Well, it feels like we've had enough coverage of it that it could be a 3 or 4 part.
Sort of a wagger for Chris. It'd be on ITVX in a year or two, wouldn't it? Where do we start on it then? I mean, I guess from you in the stadium, what was your immediate reaction? I mean, obviously you're in the press box, you're side on. The break's on, there is still time left on the clock.
It was just like shock and what on earth has he done? Why has he done that? There's a lot of times when you're in the press box and you're like, I need to see a replay of that because I've not fully seen it. But it was like, it was almost like to say it was the 95th minute as well, when usually you're sort of trying to file your match pieces, it felt like everyone saw it, they just couldn't believe it, because you sort of, I didn't know whether he'd played advantage initially or had not deemed it worthy of a foul, but I saw Simon Hooper kind of not give anything when Haaland was brought down by Romero. Then you see Haaland pick the ball up, he chips it over the top, Grealish scampers free, and then the referee blows, and it is one of the worst refereeing mistakes I can remember. It's kind of up there. Obviously, City didn't score, and you wouldn't know whether they would score, but it's probably the second worst this season after the Liverpool-Tottenham. And if you if you take into account the Bruno Fernandes goal against City in January, then it's sort of like 2 of the 3 worst this year have gone against City, which is, very disappointing for a club that pays all the referees to give them all the decisions, you have to say.
Yeah, you've got to stop paying them more, haven't they, really? It's a difficult one, is it? Is there any, am I going to be devil's advocate? I'm going to say, has Simon Hooper simply not seen Grealish from where he stood? I mean, I've seen that argument online from Liverpool fans, surprise, surprise, defending the referee in that situation when it's gone against City. That maybe there were players blocking the way, he's not seeing Grealish. But I guess ultimately the problem now is the lack of clarity and explanation of why. Yeah, I mean, in a way it doesn't really matter why he decided what he decided, but it's... But I think though, if he legitimately hadn't seen Grealish and he's like, oh, well, it's actually more of an advantage to give City this free kick now.
Yeah.
That would be an explanation. I mean, if anyone would believe that or not is a completely different... Yeah,
or he could say he thought that the Spurs players would have got back, or the keeper would have come out and got the ball, or, anything like that. It would help to have an explanation, and it doesn't need to be Simon Hooper, but it could be, Howard Webb or the head of the referees saying, look, the ref did this, as they do with VAR, as they try and sort of sell us on VAR and say, here's the thought process. You would like the thought process. And I know that, one of the arguments is, well, Haaland missed an open goal, so...
Yeah, there's no guarantee of it going in.
He made a mistake and the ref made a mistake. But it's like, yeah, but the ref is there to sort of apply
the law,
apply the rules and make sure the game flows properly. And, it was a howler of a decision, and it would help if we had his thought process, even if it's not an apology, even if it's just the ref thought that this was going to happen, so that's why I made the decision. Because otherwise your abiding feeling is Simon Hooper has made a terrible decision, and every time Simon Hooper refs again, you will think, there's Simon Hooper who made that terrible decision.
Until we've got no referees left.
Yeah, and was still cleared to play again. I thought it was daft. It was saying oh, well, he's not been stood down because they've agreed it was an honest mistake. And you think, well, what were all the other mistakes where you do stand refs down? Yeah. Are they dishonest mistakes? Are they
premeditated mistakes?
But again, it's sort of when the Tottenham-Liverpool thing happened, everyone went berserk, and there was no
rationale. Yeah.
There was no oh, well, let's just accept VAR made a mistake. It was pitchforks at the ready. Yeah. And I don't know whether it's because it's the referee rather than VAR, and we all hate VAR, so...
We're all taught to hate referees as well from a young age, aren't we?
Yeah.
They are always that person in black. Why would you want to be a referee? Every chant at a football ground is the referee is a bleep.
Yeah. But Ali McCoist was on TalkSport, and I love Ali McCoist, and he said, it was refreshing to see a referee make a mistake rather than VAR.
Good old days, wasn't it?
And I get that, but VAR has made referees worse, and referees wimp out of decisions.
Yeah, because they don't have the authority.
And VAR this season backs up referees more than ever.
They don't want to turn their mates in and be like, you've done a crap job.
If they'd had VAR for that decision, I'm not sure they'd have said that was a clear and obvious error, because they would have probably backed up whatever Simon Hooper had said. So VAR is only propping up bad refereeing. So if you're saying, oh, well, he made a mistake, get over it, you're sort of accepting refereeing is terrible, move on. And I should say as well, City didn't try and make a thing out of the decision. You know, they all went mad when it happened and they'd been charged for it. But after the game, nobody was saying we didn't win the game because of this. Everyone from Pep down, they all said we didn't win the game because we didn't take our chances, which is right. You know, City aren't having this witch hunt against the referee, but there seems to be sort of a weird witch hunt against City instead.
We will be back after this short break to talk more about refereeing. You're in for a treat. Welcome back to the Talking City podcast. Also, just a quick note, if you can hear any machinery outside, that isn't the industrial language of Simon Bajkowski. That is just more work being done right outside the podcast studio, which is very, very helpful from Reach PLC and the Manchester Union News. Simon, we promised more refereeing talk.
Yes.
Here we go. I mean, you mentioned there as well at the end of part one, the fallout of what happened. So City have been fined. Erling Haaland hasn't. Where do you stand on that? Do you think that is the right, to take punishment for what happened? I mean, ultimately, if we say we want the referees to be more accountable, then they have to have that respect, and you've got to take their word as final anyway. And players confronting them and being in their face, you know, you've got to draw a line at that, haven't you?
Yeah.
Even if they've got the right to be outraged.
No, I think so. But
I don't want to go down the rugby played by gentlemen sort of crap, because we all know that.
But you know, some of the arguments that have come out have been like mad. And one of the things is rugby, and it's like everyone respects rugby,
which they don't, by the way.
Which they don't, but also, you know, the rugby referee is mic'd up and explains his decisions, which always helps. And also, you know, rugby is not a working class sport, rugby union, which is what people say when they mean rugby. They don't mean rugby league, because they don't care. No. But you know, football is much more a working class sport than rugby union, and there's a bit of sort of class bias of well these people know how to behave, and footballers don't. Yeah. And the people who are saying that are generally showing their class. The other one is kind of like, well, Van Dijk got banned after he was sent off at Newcastle and told the referee what he thought of his decision. So why wasn't Haaland? And
we saw that Lewis Dunk red card a couple of weeks ago for dissent, didn't we, as well?
Yeah, I mean, I've seen sort of more about the Van Dijk one, probably because the Liverpool there's more about Liverpool than there is Brighton. But the thing with the Van Dijk one was that you know, the referee had made the right decision. So Van Dijk was sort of questioning a wrong decision. And you maybe, I don't know, but, you know, if the FA are evaluating everything, they probably must take into account, well, City have got every reason to be unhappy with the decision because...
factors.
Because it was the wrong decision. It was fundamentally wrong. So, you know, it is Haaland sort of screaming at a referee, which looks pretty ugly and isn't what you want to encourage.
But is in the heat of a moment in a very, very important match where he feels his team have been robbed of the opportunity to win it.
Yeah, and he's not wrong.
Yeah.
He's right.
Wrong. Yeah.
And the referee is wrong. So.
And this isn't just a kick about with mates. This is huge, and that could have serious implications on City's title defence. You
know, there are so many kids who want to be the next Haaland and look up to Haaland, and that is another debate, you know, should footballers be seen as role models or whatever, but it's not what you want to see Haaland doing, and if Haaland doing that encourages other kids to do that, then that is absolutely wrong. However, you know, City were angry. City have been charged collectively. It'll be a fine, so it won't really hurt them too much, but it'll be a decent sized fine and a reminder that they shouldn't do it. I just kind of think, and even with like, we've sort of had a lot of analysis over 3 letters with his WTF post. You know, is that swearing?
I mean, it's one of those where you need to know what it means yourself. In isolation, WTF is not swearing, is it?
Is that questioning? I mean, I think you could say that it's...
You already need to know what the swear word is yourself for it to have any meaning.
You could argue that it's questioning the referee's decision. I'm not sure you could argue it's questioning the integrity of the referee.
He's allowed to disagree with a decision. There's no
Yeah.
There's no law that says referee's decision, you have to agree with it.
Yeah, I mean, I imagine a lot of the millions of people watching the game will have expressed similar sentiment, whether they support City or not. When they saw that decision, will have been, what on earth has gone on, has happened there? So, yeah, it's I feel like all the talk of Haaland needs to be banned and City need to be, I don't know, expelled from the league for this, is coming from a bit of, we need to make an example of someone.
Yeah, and let's do it to the
And let's do it
best
to
team.
the most high-profile player and the champions.
Yeah.
But I think if you're looking at precedent, I don't really think there has been. There's not. So Lewis Dunk got sent off by the on-field referee.
Yeah.
I can't remember a situation where a player has sort of, had a go at a ref, has had no on-field punishment and has
had retrospective.
Yeah. And even with the incident with Garnacho and Onana, which was very similar to Bernardo Silva, the FA were more lenient on Garnacho than they were Bernardo. And if you were City, you could probably make the point, well, the FA are sort of showing that they're showing more lenience than they did. So it would be sort of out of character for them to be sort of less lenient than they have been on a lot of other stuff this season.
And again, like you said, that ultimately it's just always the buzzword of refereeing. It's just consistency of your decision making, consistency of your punishments, consistency just with how you apply the rules. And then if there is that consistency, then you might not agree with it, but at least you don't feel like different teams are getting different treatment. You don't feel like there is these blurred lines about what's what, basically.
And I think, it was really out of character or inconsistent with everything we've seen, which is why I think it's such a bad decision and like up there in the worst decisions, because one of the big things now is the refs let everything go. And a player can be miles offside.
Maybe if this had happened 15 years ago, you say that's understandable because there wasn't this sort of motive from the top where the Premier League would say, look, we want to encourage fast flowing football. We want the play to continue, then we'll bring it back. Yeah. We've seen countless times where a player's clearly offside, he's allowed to put the ball back in the net and then they put the flag up.
Yeah.
Why, in this example, would you do the same?
Because someone was saying, what if they thought Grealish was offside? Well, wait for the linesman and...
Or check it. Let him go through and then check it if it's offside.
But it's inconsistent from his decision 1 second earlier because he's thought, all right, I'm going to let this go and see if there's an advantage rather than blow up for the foul. So why not wait a second after the ball is played to see if there is that advantage rather than, maybe he thought, Erling Haaland's never going to play someone through. So he blew up, but that doesn't excuse it, and there isn't really an excuse for it other than he simply got it wrong. And many people get things wrong, and people in football get things wrong all the time in games.
Read my pieces every single day.
Yeah, but there is kind of like another, one of the arguments has been, well, Haaland missed an open goal, so he made a mistake, so that's just the same as that. And you're like, yeah, that's fine, but it's a bit like coming to sort of the end of a boxing match and someone scores you wrong and you lose the fight. And they say, well, if you'd knocked him out in round 5, we wouldn't have had to do it. And it's like, well, yeah, but you still done your job wrong. And
I guess that just depends how you look at sport in general, isn't it? Because like you said, you could look at you look at a match where it's 0-0, someone misses the penalty in the last minute. The concentration would be on the penalty miss, but you could say, well, there's loads of mistakes prior to that. But ultimately, that is the one moment that could have, right at the end, impacted the result and swung it either way. So
yeah, and I think like there is a lot of sort of defence of Simon Hooper as like...
I was going to ask you about this because I think the managers have... I mean, Pep said he didn't want to make a Mikel Arteta comment, which, was brilliant. But we've seen, Ange, as we all love him. Yeah. He's very open and honest, and he does back referees. I remember after Tottenham's that game against Chelsea, he was asked straight away after, what did you make of the red cards? Do you think that worked against your team? And he went, well, ultimately, no, the referee's decision is final. We've got to respect them. If we don't, it'll be robots in Stockley Park who are officiating games. We won't have them on the pitch. Yeah. Is there also an element where you say, look, whether you like it or not, the referee's word is final. Without them, you don't have a game?
There could be an element for that. But again, that is not in keeping with everything that has happened over the last few years. We wanted VAR because the refs weren't good enough. We needed extra stuff to make sure that they did their jobs properly because people weren't happy about the decisions the refs were making. So, now Simon Hooper's is being defended because it's just one man who's made a mistake. But you're like, right, but you weren't happy with that a few years ago. And also, if you extrapolate it, you could say he's made a mistake that is indicative of the poor standard of refereeing.
Is that not just part of football though, poor refereeing? It's always been part of that. And I think if you ask lots of fans who support teams in the lower leagues, they love that there's no VAR. They love that there's, part of, for me, myself, going to football, there is almost part of the therapy of it that afterwards, you are outraged by what happened in the game. You're outraged by the officiating. You're outraged that ball crossed the line or not. Well, that's just maybe part of the fabric of the game. And if you're talking about the heritage and essence of football, maybe that is just back to what it used to be, where you don't have technology and you just accept that, as some managers used to say, that it'll balance itself out by the end of the season. Some stuff will go your way, some stuff won't.
And you absolutely could make that argument if there wasn't VAR. And if you hadn't pushed for VAR, it's having your cake and eating it, saying...
It's not nice cake, is it?
No, it's a horrible cake. You're saying, we want technology to make sure that every decision is right, and we will blow our top whenever there is one decision made that isn't right. But if the referee on the field makes a decision that isn't right and doesn't get picked up on it, then that's all right.
Yeah.
Absolutely
He's
fine.
on 8,
it doesn't...
Don't stitch him up.
It doesn't matter. He made a mistake. Move on. Players made a mistake. Who cares? When was the last time there was a VAR error and everyone brought up, well, United should have finished that goal. So, let's all have respect for the VAR because, it wasn't just VAR's fault. No, people go in two-footed on VAR all the time. And if you're going to treat VAR, and we talk of VAR like it is a robot, but it is...
It's like the supercomputer, isn't it? It is a supercomputer.
It is officials, yeah. So if you're going to treat VAR like that, you have to treat referees the same.
What did you make of Pep after the game then? What sort of mood was he in as you sat down, stressed, sweating through after ripping apart your match report twice?
He was in a much better place than he was when he fell over as Tottenham scored their third goal. Sort of looked to the side as Tottenham scored and just see him completely on the floor. Yeah, like someone had sort of knocked him onto the back of his shell.
He's just been sort of one of those gospel churches and had Christ taken out of him or something.
Yeah, Pep was very restrained throughout. City players lost their top at that decision and the club have rightly been charged for it. But Pep was very restrained throughout, and usually is with these type of things. And he came out on Sky and said, I'm not going to make a Mikel Arteta comment. But then in his press conference, he was kind of asked about that, and he said, look, I lose my heat in the moment, but I'm never going to come into these press conferences and start slagging off referees because that's not why we lost the game, and it's not what he wants to be focusing on. He was in a very good mood. Or sort of when games like this happen, I think Pep comes in and expects a load of questions saying like, why are you so rubbish? Yeah. And he's got in his head what he's going to say why the team was so good and why questions about them being not so good are not as valid as people.
You wouldn't have been surprised if he came out and said it was the best performance he'd ever seen City play or something.
And he rightly said that they created loads of chances and...
He focused on the positives, didn't he?
I was asked, are you worried about not taking those chances? And he said, no, we created loads, it'll happen.
And look, drawing with Tottenham, that's an improvement on some years, isn't it?
Yeah, it's just like we were saying about, it could be seen as a one-off game, but in the pattern of the last 3 or 4 games, there have been quite a lot of trends that are not so good for City. Which again isn't to say that, they're going to get relegated or they're not going to challenge for the title, but it's not really where they would like to be at.
It was nice to watch a game on a Sunday afternoon in a normal slot. New £6.7 billion Premier League deal. What does this mean for City? What does this mean for, I suppose, match-going fans and supporters who are maybe following them from across the world? Because I suppose the ultimate whether some fans like it or not, it is the biggest football league in the world. It has got a global audience, and whether you like it or not, there is no money in matchday fans. They are just part of the charade.
Yes, yeah, and I think that is an issue that is bubbling to the surface at City more and more, where
it's often, be careful what you wish for. If you want success, you've got to accept that it also brings in lots of people who weren't there when you struggled and who maybe do want to latch onto it. And from the club's point of view, there is worthy of going to games, and they've got much interest as anyone else. It's just keeping everyone happy is very difficult, if not impossible. Yeah,
it's funny. You tend to think of fan bases as kind of static and things that don't move. And the City fan base contains, tens of thousands of fans who've been going for 20, 30, 40 years. But it also contains newer fans.
I'll just jump on that. When I did the City tour in the summer, there was 70,000 capacity stadiums. City played Bayern Munich. There was genuinely about 65,000 City fans, 5,000 Bayern Munich fans. It was pandemonium. I've never seen, even when I've covered the other team in Manchester on the pre-season tour, I don't think it compared to how many City fans were all there, all in their replica kit, all official merchandise, all with De Bruyne or Haaland on the back.
Yeah,
it was crazy.
And that in itself, there was a career where there was a really long queue.
Yeah, it was
about the game for merchandise.
It was about a 2-3 hour queue just to get the merchandise stall, and then there was another sort of 3-hour queue to see the treble trophies. And there was people having to miss kickoff because they wanted to see the trophies in person. And it was.
Yeah, and so the club this season have changed a few things with their ticketing policies, which means that it is easier for people who haven't been sort of, should we call them legacy fans?
Call them legacy fans. I'm really annoy them as well.
But legacy fans versus Super League fans. Yeah. But people who haven't been legacy fans can more easily attend games, and that can be a good thing. And you shouldn't be saying this is a closed shop. But there is also at the point where, a bit like the Community Shield, tens of thousands of City fans boycotted it, and City still sold out, which is amazing. And City has sold out, all the tickets. They put every home game for the season on sale in July, and they've sold out sort of every batch of tickets.
And that's also the dilemma, isn't it? Because even if you are maybe a legacy fan who says, look, I've got principles, morals, I'm not paying over this, I'm not going to go to that game, there will be tens of thousands of people who will happily take it, and they will not see the price as an issue.
Yeah.
And then you are in a stranglehold where you've got to almost buy into it to continue to have your support of the club, and if you don't, you miss out, and you might never get the chance to go to games again.
Yeah, and it's sort of there's a bit of irony in that City has always been seen as like the empty had by some.
Blue suits everywhere.
Yeah, which is nonsense, but also
if anyone's ever been to the Etihad in person on a match day, they will realise that's false.
Yeah, but there are points to that, but now you get into a point where City can say, we're selling out every game is full, but because of who they're selling to, the atmosphere isn't quite, the atmosphere certainly isn't what it was the second half of last season, and there is some sort of justification in that, because like the players aren't playing like it was the second half of last season. It doesn't feel like things matter as much, because they don't, because if you draw with Tottenham 3-3 in December, it's not the same as drawing 3-3 with them in May when you need 3 points to win the league. But the more kind of new fans you introduce to games who aren't familiar with, the match day, and maybe the more fans who have bought a ticket to see Erling Haaland or have bought a ticket to see the treble winners, and who are going to be entertained,
sort of football tourists rather than football fans.
Yeah. And City are trying to get bigger and bigger in this world and need to attract football tourists, and everyone has them. United have them, Barcelona, Real Madrid, Bayern Munich.
Wrexham. Yeah, they are inundated.
Like Dortmund are seen as having one of the best fan bases in the world.
And that's the irony of it, isn't it? That from a British point of view, and I'm the same as I'm a big hypocrite, and I alluded to then, if I want to watch Wrexham, you've got to have a season ticket. You can't, you cannot. There's 1,000 tickets sort of free to non-season ticket holders, but you go into a tombola, so you can't actually guarantee getting to every game. And then I see loads of Americans come over, and I'm like, they weren't here in the past, but they're part of the success.
Yeah.
But then I'm also like, I'd love to go watch a Bundesliga game for one day, and I'd be the tourist. Yeah. And that's fine because it's me.
Yeah,
but when it's on the foot with shoes on your foot, you get a bit.
If you go in, like, everyone in England knows someone who has been to a Borussia Dortmund game.
Yeah.
Because
or be on a stag do to somewhere in the Bundesliga or to Prague or somewhere, and they're going to watch a game.
You've all like, lads' holidays, what do you want to do? Do you fancy going watching local team? Yeah, should we watch like Porto? Yeah, great.
Buy a nice retro jersey, drink your Sagres.
Exactly. So
and you look good on the gram, you're one of the lads, toxic masculinity. Then when someone comes over and does it in your backyard, it's the worst thing that's ever happened. Yeah,
like it is a sign of how City are growing, that they're attracting these fans. And, for many years, the kind of reality / insult from the other half of Manchester was that, if he said Manchester anywhere around the world, they would just
used to always get fake quotes of players like, "Oh, I knew there's one team in Manchester." That means you're thick, basically.
Unless you said this season.
It means like, do you understand football? If you knew there's one team in Manchester, that's just.
Yeah. But now, you go around the world, you see Haaland, De Bruyne shirts, you see people going mad for City.
And the amount of, even just colloquially, you just see on match days, the amount of like kids who have Haaland haircuts, they have like dreadful top knots. I'm sure there'll be kids dyeing their hair ginger as well. Do you know what I mean? Like, there is City mania. And also the reality check as well now. You look at someone like Jude Bellingham. I've done this when I've worked on the other team in Manchester. There is another team in Manchester, believe it or not. Towns Cameron. You look at players like Bellingham. When he was born, only City have been winning trophies basically since he's been an active football fan who's been watching games since he's sort of 10 years and above. The most modern footballers now, the young wonder kids, only know Man City as the team who win trophies, and that will have a knock-on effect. And the true gauge of how big City are will be in 10, 20 years when you've got loads of youngsters who grew up on City winning everything, and they want a part of that.
And like Julian Alvarez sort of grown up idolising Sergio Aguero, and who does Sergio Aguero play for? Man City, the team who wins the Premier League all the time. So as part of winning leagues and as part of having the best players in the world, and Haaland is kind of a step above, but also Grealish is so popular among kids in England. And
he's not on the same level, but he's sort of the modern Beckham in terms of his celebrity profile and just coming across as a really nice person as well. And obviously the mums love him.
And
the dads too.
He's the second biggest sort of superstar at City behind Haaland, and everywhere you go, every away ground you go to, the fans will the kids will love him. The parents might like boo him or whatever during the game, but they'll still be wanting his autograph after it and before it, and
that's rival fans as well. There's this respect where any sort of kid would want to meet Jack Grealish. I'd love to have a chance, and it's the fact as well from an English point of view, he is one of England's superstars, not just Man City. So there's national pride in who he is as well. So
and also with Grealish, you're talking about a guy who's not like, it's not like he's done loads in an England shirt, or like it's not like he scores every week for City, but it's just his profile,
his aura.
And he's got very lucrative sort of off the pitch sponsorship deals because of that. So it's difficult, and it's a moving situation, and it's really hard for fans. It's really hard for clubs. You would imagine that this kind of Premier League deal means that it gives the clubs more money, I suppose, but also
they need more money, don't they? All these clubs.
They always want more money, whether they need more. Their appeal around the country, around the world will grow as a result. They might attract more fans, but it also means more inconvenient kickoff times probably for match-going fans. And
I guess the harsh truth and the bottom line is that's not going to change. There might become a breaking point one day in football where people do revolt, but I can't see that coming anytime soon. And the factor is that you look at maybe City going to an away game, a few thousand match-going fans, their interests are going to be dwarfed by millions of City fans across the world wanting to watch that game. You know, it's which audience you cater to. What I think from a traditionalist background, we always want match-going fans to be, every game should kick off at 3 o'clock, put the special trains on, you know, worry about them. But the fact is that their money is minute compared to the global TV money coming in.
Yeah, and it's just like supporting a football club is irrational.
Well, you can say you support a football club.
Yeah, but you'll never sort of get away from the fact that you can complain rightly about, you know, inconvenient kickoff times or prices going up, but you'll still be there. You know, I was talking the other day about, I had a season ticket that costs about 250 quid. And last game of the season, I got offered like 1,500 quid for that season ticket from like support of another club who wanted to go in and watch the game. And I turned it down. And it was like 6 times what I'd paid for my season ticket for just one game. The last game of the season made no difference whatsoever to me. But it was like, no, I want to go and watch my team. Yeah. And it's like...
Stupid decision that. Do you regret it?
No, I don't. But it does kind of show up how silly things can be.
And that's the same with football in general, isn't it? That City could have lost 6-0 on Sunday. You'll be there on Wednesday hoping they beat Villa, because that's just how football, you get angry, you ride the wave of it, and that's just what happens.
But, you know, the difference between people who go to the game to support their team and people who go to the game to be entertained and to see you know, City need to sustain their success for those kind of, that second type of fan to go, whereas the first lot will always be there. But while the second lot are there, the first won't get kind of as much attention or consideration as they otherwise might, because they're not needed as much, because tens of thousands of you can stay away from the game and we'll still fill the stadium, thanks very much. And then you would turn around and say, but the atmosphere won't be as good, and they'll say,
who cares? More money in the bank.
It is very difficult, because you've got to sort of
find that balance,
and the balance is always moving, and you're always having to do things. But at the minute at City, it feels like not everything's perfect with the team, and not everything's great in terms of atmosphere.
Thank you very much for joining us for part 2. We'll be back after the break to look ahead to City's game against Villa this midweek. Welcome back to the Talking City podcast from Manchester Evening News. City against Villa in midweek. The game is live on Amazon Prime in the UK. You can get a 30-day free trial in the description below if you're watching on YouTube. You can also get the links on the Manchester Evening News website as well. City versus Villa then, Si. It is an interesting game, isn't it? I mean, Villa have been the best of the traditional rest in the league this season. Unai Emery's got a real exciting squad there, a team that can blow hot or cold. We saw that against Bournemouth at the weekend, that they're a team who often take points against the bigger sides but can struggle for motivation against teams they feel they should then be beating. You know, by the end of the season, I wouldn't be surprised if they did drop off and finish 5th or 6th. We've seen that many times in the past from teams who've had these early surges, and you always get those tedious articles of, can Southampton qualify for the Champions League? No. But Villa do seem a bit different. They've got real pedigree with their manager. They've got a very experienced squad, both internationally and in European competition. Do you see this as a banana skin for City, or do you think that, in a way, City are at their best when people think that they might be? From that run of Chelsea, Liverpool, Spurs, Villa, you would have been looking for sort of 7 to 9 points from it. I think 7 to 9 would have been considered good, depending on kind of the upshot of it. Well, City have got 3, so they can't get 7 even if they beat Villa. So they're sort of on a must win
on a hide into nothing whatever they do. But especially because they'd won every home game this year, so to then draw 2 really puts the pressure on the away games, because the home sort of form had been the platform from which everything was built on. It's a lot easier going away if you win your home games. And Villa score goals. They score a lot of goals at home. Under Emery, they've got a very attacking team, and City do not look like a team who are set to keep clean sheets. So I'd be very surprised if they kept one at Villa Park against one of the best attacks in the league. So it might be a case of them having to outscore Villa to, well, obviously you have to outscore, but you know, I think it might be a high-scoring game if City are to win, because Villa have the strengths and the skills to cause them problems.
City not really beating any of the teams you'd expect them to challenge for the title either this season. Obviously, Villa would go above City if they won. But we said earlier in the podcast, you do still expect City at some point to find their feet, to get everything back right. Obviously, when returning players are back, they will be without some key men though at Villa Park, won't they? It is difficult, even this amazing City team, to make a case and say they're definitely going to win there.
They drew to Steven Gerrard's Aston Villa, so you couldn't say that even with the strongest team. But it's very difficult without Rodri, as they've already shown this season. And even Jack Grealish being away, being banned.
And against his former club as well, there's always that nice bit of...
Yeah, I mean, we're going to wait to see if there's, what the latest on Jeremy Doku is, because the suggestion was that he came off injured.
Yeah, it looked like he limped off, but it didn't look...
Yeah, I didn't think much of it, but... I remember with a 3-day turnaround.
Is that Ian Rush or Mark? Yeah, I think it was Ian Rush, but he basically said, if you ever have a game where you don't feel you played that well, walk off and pretend to be injured. Yeah, so there's an excuse for your performance.
Yeah, very true.
I do that 5-a-side every week. So.
Yeah. Doku, if they're without Doku as well as Grealish and Rodri, that's a lot of holes to be filled. Now, the interesting thing is John Stones, because he's been sat on the bench for the last 3 games. And Pep said, he's not quite ready. He's almost ready, but he's not. Is Villa part of the game where you say, right, well, John Stones is fit enough and he's playing that Rodri role, and that is one dilemma gone, because John Stones is good enough to play that position and play it sort of, almost as well as Rodri is. So we only have to think about sort of left wing or something like that. But if he's not fit enough, then
there's a real dilemma there, isn't there?
Yeah, because
would you have a candidate you'd put in? I mean, like you said, we've mentioned Rico Lewis before, being able to play centrally, but we mentioned in terms of his own development that just because he's young and promising, throwing him into a team like that with that pressure on him, and without Rodri beside him or Stones there to support him, it's a big ask.
It is a big ask. You almost wonder whether Villa will cause some chaos. So do you throw Calvin Phillips in? I think Lewis would be the preference, but then Lewis has played more as an 8 than a 6. You're probably going to need Bernardo Silva to drop back and help out with whoever plays there.
Could it be the final chance for Calvin Phillips then?
Maybe, or maybe the rebirth of Calvin Phillips, and he'll really thrive in this game, and that will sort of see him earn. And you made
a good point there from the Tottenham game as well, that maybe not hypocrisy from Pep saying he's suited to these games but then not bring him on, but when there's players like Rodri missing and he's not getting a chance, at least maybe sometime, I know lots of City fans will say we've seen enough to know that we ain't getting anything the best out of him, but there'll be a section of supporters say, well, give him another go. Especially if you go into Villa and there's already an expectation that you might drop points, and it wouldn't be the end of the world again, because even City drew, let's say, they wouldn't be that far off the top anyway. He's still better to become good, but there'll be an argument to say, look, at least give him another chance to at least prove himself and have that opportunity to rebirth. Otherwise, his confidence is only going to get lower when there's an obvious opening from the team and he's still being overlooked.
Yeah, I think the expectation is that he will leave in January on loan to play more regular football, but like I was talking before about those issues kind of stacking up for City, you don't know whether one of the issues is, again, Rodri's had to play so much because there hasn't been anyone to cover him. Phillips has barely played, but Kovacic hasn't stepped up and has been injured. Nunez has been injured. So the midfield has really sort of been lighter than what it would, and that even if sort of Rodri is playing the number of games he had done or normally would, even kind of not having who you would like in front of you places more pressure on him to step up, and he will feel like he has to do more with John Stones not being there and with Kevin De Bruyne not being there. So they really do need to find more cover for Rodri.
That's one of the problems, isn't it? When you've got a player that good, you can rely on Rodri because he plays almost every single week traditionally, and his performance level never drops. But then you also do need to have a backup plan just in case. And I know that Pep will be like, well, the backup plan is Rodri plays every week. There is no backup plan. That's the ideal world. And you don't want to be too pessimistic. But it is a very, especially when it's been said so many times, and Rodri said on the eve of the season himself, look, the fixture schedule already is unmanageable. We've already reached the limit. You need to find a way to be able to rest your best players and win without them as well. That's what the very best teams do.
Yeah, you do. It's sort of, it's a bit more manageable with a goalkeeper where you just say, right, you're number 2 and you come in whenever he doesn't play, whereas you can't really say like, look, you never play unless he's injured, because which player is going to sign up for that? So it is difficult, but it's also difficult because with Stones not being fit as well, sort of you lose your most natural, like the closest you can come to replacing one of the best players in the world. So yeah, it's going to be really tricky, and yeah, we wouldn't be expecting necessarily a City victory.
Yeah, well, I was going to come to you finally there and ask, what is your... I'm not asking for your score prediction per se, because who the hell knows? This is pre-press conference as well, so Pep could drop a bomb in an hour or two, couldn't he? And who knows what the team would be. But yeah, do you think City can... Because part of me thinks, look, the fact that everyone's a bit down on City, they could come out and just be like, look, we are still the best team in the world. 5-0 at Villa Park, Haaland scores all 5.
Yeah.
That sort of vibe. But there's always going to be the devil's advocate saying, well, the misery's there. City there's a blueprint to beat them.
I'm thinking that it will be a draw. Okay.
I think City will win. I do think they'll come out all guns firing and be like, look, well done, Villa. You're the pretenders. We're the contenders. This is why we're going to go win it again.
Yeah. But ultimately, you know, aside from any refereeing decisions, City are going to have to attack better, and they're going to have to defend better than they did against Tottenham, and that they did against Liverpool, and that they did against Chelsea.
And they'll also have to manage the game better. And even if they're on top, not give Villa the opportunity to get Villa Park rocking and for them to think there's a chance that they can get back in the game. You need to kill any hopes they've got of... Yeah,
well, it's very like, you know, part of the reason why people have called City boring is because in the past when they've gone ahead, they've just won every game. And
there's not even a sniff for the opposition.
No, whereas now
arm's length away.
3 games in a row, they've took the lead and they've conceded, which is most unlike them. So they're going to have to sort something out.
They will have to sort something out, and we'll be back later in the week to see what does happen at Villa Park. So that's all from us on the Talking City podcast. Thank you very much, Simon, for joining us once again. Pleasure. Thank you very much for joining us wherever you are in the world. As always, please do leave us a 5-star review on whichever platform you listen to us on. Make sure you subscribe and join us again next time when we look back at that, shall we say, win at Villa Park. We shall see. Take care, and we'll see you again next time.